A Knox County nonprofit dedicated to helping people in crisis is facing a crisis of its own. For years, we've reported on changes in leadership at the Knoxville Family Justice Center. It's seen 4 executive directors in just 6 years. Well, now 3 prominent county leaders are pooling their support. 10 News anchor Brittany Bailey and veteran investigative journalist John North dug into allegations of bullying and budget concerns and what this means for the future of these crucial services for victims. Brittany?
Robin, the Family Justice Center serves victims of domestic violence, connecting them with social services and law enforcement. Everyone involved in this dispute says those victims are still getting help, but they are deeply divided about who should be leading that effort.
I became concerned when our executive director started referring to the Family Justice Center as being in the ghetto. And when you look at where that building is, there's a multi-million-dollar baseball stadium right across the street and $500,000 condos, which are right across the street. So I didn't really understand that characterization.
Mike Hammond is the Knox County Criminal Court clerk and a now former board member for the Knoxville Family Justice Center as of the August meeting.
I just didn't feel like I could be a part anymore, and so that was when I resigned.
And you walked out of that meeting?
Yes.
So did 2 other county leaders, Knox County Sheriff Tom Spangler and District Attorney General Sharm Allen.
My role was changing as a result of what was happening there, and that is not something that, as a prosecutor, I wanted to be involved in.
All 3 told 10 News they lost confidence in Executive Director Michelle Clayton. They say they were alarmed by some of her comments, the treatment of her employees and community partners, and her view of law enforcement, saying she did not want officers in the building which the county owns.
Putting them under her umbrella, so to speak, if you will, that wasn't going to happen. That is a Knox County building owned by Knox County, so yeah, we're going to be there.
WBIR requested emails and financial audits, along with an internal review led by former magistrate Richard Major. He interviewed staff, advocates, and a survivor. Their complaints were compiled into a file we requested and included allegations of unprofessional conduct and racially inappropriate comments. One complaint claimed Michelle Clayton's leadership contributed to a hostile organizational climate, hindered internal progress, and caused operational stagnation at the Knoxville Family Justice Center. The documents reveal she also made employees cry and called some names, including Barbie, Mean Girl, and Elmer Fudd. Another complaint in the files we requested was about $250 worth of Visa gift cards that were donated to the FJC, potentially being given to someone who came up with the design for the mailroom. Now, the person who raised this concern used a personal email address out of, quote, fear of retaliation from Clayton. Clayton later told us she did end up paying for that redesign by check instead of using those gift cards. We also looked at a financial review of the budget done by Mike Hammond. He flagged budget concerns, mostly tied to oversight and documentation. Now, from the last fiscal year to this one, spending on technology, consulting, and employee travel are up, while spending is down for staff training, continuing education, and client services. Payroll also was one of his concerns, with 72% of the budget devoted to payroll and more than half of that going to just 2 people, including Michelle Clayton. But her salary of $110,000 was approved by the previous board. Now, when Clayton learned of some board members' concerns, she wrote a 13-page response, and in it, she wrote that recent dynamics reflect a return to patterns of mistrust and reactive oversight that have historically destabilized leadership at the FJC. She went on to say many of the concerns raised stem from either legacy challenges that are now being addressed or misunderstandings of the evolving governance structure. And in response to some of the criticism against her, she told us that she considers law enforcement officers real-life superheroes and responded to the ghetto comments by saying clients have said they don't want to travel to East Knoxville.
But if I was to have been found wrong for something, we would not be speaking. If I was a type of leader that was just a horrific tyrant, I would still be a classroom teacher if that was ever part of my leadership style. And I've been a principal since I was 25 years old.
There have been no findings of wrongdoing or mismanagement. Obviously, transition is always tough, especially when you have new leadership, and that's understandable. But as far as anything that would deliberately cast her as doing something negligent or malicious, there's been none of that.
Clay Pruitt is now the board chairman after the shakeup. He and the current board, including city representatives, stand firmly behind Clayton. Pruitt says the Family Justice Center has struggled with leadership turnover for years, but points to a systemic problem, not a problem with Clayton's leadership.
I had some concerns about the organization and the problems that could be systemic to the organization. And we brought Michelle in, felt like she was doing a great job, and then over time you have a situation where she's in a similar situation as the previous executive director. And when you go through 4 executive directors or when you're on your 4th executive director in 6 years, that sounds to me like it's a systemic problem.
You don't think it's a Michelle problem?
I don't.
Last April, the board fired the previous executive director, Catherine Ellis, months after 7 board members had resigned. Back then, Ellis also pointed to a divide between the FJC and local agencies, including the sheriff's office and DA's office. And that was all before the most recent board voted to move forward with a new all-civilian board before backtracking.
It makes me extremely uncomfortable and flat out fearful that very powerful people can vote and choose to go in a direction, then change their mind with what they wanted, that not happen for them, and then them using their power and influence to present a picture that me, a random civilian, is just an epic failure as a leader. That is a terrifying feeling for me, and I empathize and sympathize with every previous director before me, because now I know exactly what it felt like for them.
Clayton says any financial and management concerns have been cleared up, and when the comptroller's office stopped by to investigate, she was later given the all clear, and Pruitt confirms this. Pruitt also points to Clayton's successes, from repairing outdated systems she inherited to increasing the donor base and bringing in new grants.
Michelle has high expectations, but she also has a huge heart, and she cares about the victims. And we all feel like that's the kind of leader that this organization needs.
But the Family Justice Center's future may come down to funding. State money from the Office of Criminal Justice Programs, or OCJP, requires local support through memos of understanding, or MOUs. Now, with the DA, sheriff, and court clerk withdrawing their MOUs, that funding could be in jeopardy. Officials with the OCJP confirmed that the center's current contract expires on June 30th of next year. Now, officials told us, while it is possible that a new contract may not be executed due to the current situation with the MOUs, we're hopeful that the discussions will be fruitful and that a path forward with the required partners will be found.
Well, it's hard to tell which way it's going to go. You know, obviously we depend on funding from the government, and that's important to the mission. But I will say that at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is helping people. And that's what we are going to continue to do.
Making this even more complex, the 3 county leaders are now joining forces to launch a separate nonprofit with similar services called Bridge to Safety.
Bridge to Safety, if you will, just helps bridge all those resources for those victims who are so in need at that time of so many services.
We're operating, and the services are there. We haven't skipped a beat, and anyone who has needed any services, they're able to get them.
Meanwhile, city leaders are still supporting the Family Justice Center. Mayor India Kincannon said the city is proud to support the Family Justice Center and their mission to make our communities safer and stronger. And Chief Noel wrote, "We remain entirely committed to the National Family Justice Center model that has proven effective at addressing domestic violence in cities all across the country for decades." Now, for their part, Clayton and Pruitt say nothing has changed for clients at the Family Justice Center, but they do worry about the impact of a public rift.
This isn't us versus them. This is how do we help the people who need it? And I think the more time that we spend at odds in trying to solve this situation, the less time you can spend giving your attention to the people who need it, the women and children who are in terrible situations and deserve to get out.
I am concerned that clients will say, I'm not going in there because it is always burning, because that is what ends up happening when these people who have power decide that they don't like someone anymore. And then who is going to be willing to do this?
Now, we also reached out to Knox County Mayor Glenn Jacobs. His agreement with the Family Justice Center allows that nonprofit to use the county-owned building. He said if the FJC remains in operation, that arrangement could continue. But he also does support that new Bridge to Safety initiative. Robin?
Brittany, thank you for your extensive reporting on this story. You can read much more right now at WBIR.com.